family official advisor and a registered investment advisor, which just means I have a whole bunch of licenses to allow me to talk to people about money, right? And I got some amazing guys with me here today. Devon, Kennard, former NFL player, real estate investor, and author. And then we have Ferrell, financial educator here. And so we are gonna open up, because, you know, we don't do biographies here, right? I'm not gonna read their bios, but I'm gonna ask these gentlemen to tell the crowd one thing that is not on your bio that they need to know.
Me first?
Yeah.
I guess I'll tell a story. Being a professional athlete, one of my first memories playing in the NFL, we're playing in Seattle, and it's like Marshawn Lynch. And it was like my welcome to the NFL moment. I meet him. I meet the fullback in the hole. I set the edge, and he's in. Our middle linebacker comes and goes to tackle him. And for the first time, I saw a grown man run another grown man completely over. And I just remember, like mid-play, I'm like screeching. But that was kind of for me. Was like, man, I'm in the NFL, and it was kind of a wake-up moment of like, wow, this is one of the best running backs, to play in my generation, and I'm playing against them. So that's kind of a story that like isn't in my bar.
Welcome to the big leagues.
Yeah, welcome to the big league moment for me.
Nice, Jeff.
Wow, so I don't have a story that good, but something impactful for me that you don't see on my bio is my biggest wealth partner is my wife of 25 years, and we share three. Thank you. We've got three wonderful young men that we're raising. Jeff, my son, who's 26. The next one is Kyle, he's 23. And my baby boy, he's at the age of infinite wisdom, Gabriel, he's 15. So no matter what I say to him, I know. Dad, I know. So.
Cool, thank you. And so we are talking about generational wealth, Black legacy, right? And we have some questions here, and I just want to kind of set the tone, right? I dislike using the term wealth gap because that means that like we're lacking in something. And when you look at history, we literally created this country, y'all. Like we've had wealth, we've been wealth. We are literally the creation of creators, right? And so we do know that there is a Grand Canyon size something in between these folks and these folks when it comes to money. And so we want to talk about what are some things that we can do, what's going on right now, what are some things that we can do to help us catch up, get ahead, and really make sure that we are doing what's best for our families, right? I like to call it the Rockefeller mindset. Anybody know what that means? It means you build it once and it just keeps going versus building it, losing it, building it, losing it, building it, losing it, right? And so I want you guys to talk about what do you see in the work that you do going on? What are the current trends of how we're investing, what we're investing in, and ultimately as Black men, why is it important that we invest at all?
So I think we start with where things have been going, and we tend to chase trends a lot of times. We hear something sexy, like crypto is super sexy now, and everybody's talking about how well it's going up. But I always challenge my clients when I sit down with them and I ask them, okay, well, what is it? Because if you don't understand something, it doesn't make sense for you to get involved in it on a financial level until you understand it. Yeah. So I start with education. And I know that sounds almost cliche, it's like financial literacy and all of that. But for me, what that means is that you actually understand it from a place of doing. Right. Not just philosophical, hey, I read a book on it, hey, I talked to a couple of people, but no, I'm doing it, and here's how I'm doing it. And so when I think about financial or building wealth, I think about building a house. And the most important part of the house is the foundation. Yep. If the foundation ain't sure, it doesn't matter how pretty the roof is. Mm-hmm. And so I talk a lot about concentrating on building foundational tools that will last, that you won't have to be up and down, right? Mm-hmm. But a garden, you grow fruit. Yeah. When you eat fruit has seeds within it. You plant those seeds, you get more garden. And so anybody can count the number of seeds in an apple, but only God can count the number of apples in a seed. So it's important, I think, to think of it from that perspective. Don't be in a big hurry, just take your time and build.
Yeah.
Kind of, playing off of that, one thing I talk a lot about is this concept of having your TMI, and TMI for me means your target monthly income. So many people don't know exactly how much they spend on a month-to-month, year-to-year basis. So building that foundation, I feel like I kind of like reverse engineering it. What does my lifestyle now cost me, on a month-to-month basis? And then you could kind of be like, all right, how much am I making? How much are my bills? What are my fixed expenses versus variable expenses? But, in conversations and, after I wrote my book and having conversations with, African Americans, too many of us don't know, what our TMI is, what that looks like for us. So, I think a part of it is we don't want to know because we're afraid of what that actually looks like.
Yes.
So I think addressing that and identifying that our financial well-being is just as, if not more important than our physical, mental, emotional, and even spiritual well-being. And I hate the notion that's like, money doesn't matter, because I feel like money impacts all of those.
Absolutely.
Gravely. So for me, it's like, take your financial well-being just as, if not more serious. And an example I always give that I've experienced personally is my grandmother was sick years ago before she died, and for years she was complaining about chest pain and things like that, but she never wanted to go to the doctor. And why? Doctor bills, they ain't gonna tell me nothing, or they just gonna send me some big bill. That's not happening in other cultures. As soon as they get a hangnail, they go into the doctor and getting checked up. Yeah. So you can't tell me our financial well-being doesn't impact even our physical well-being in that way. So that's just an example I like to use, to where it's like we need to make that shift. Yeah. Because it'll kind of trickle effect in all the other areas of our lives.
Yeah, I mean, we already know money's the number one, for divorce, suicide, heart attacks, right? And so it is important. And to what you're saying, we don't necessarily want to see that number on paper, because most of us maybe are going over that number. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then it's like a gut check, like, oh, I'm spending more than what I make. Yeah. That's the first principle I'm breaking. Right? And so you both are entrepreneurs, right? Mm-hmm. And so talk about that journey and when it started and why entrepreneur, why calling your own shots, why that route?
Well, I'll go back to my childhood. I grew up, my parents were both from the South. My daddy grew up in Alabama, Anniston, Alabama. My mom's from Clarksdale, Mississippi. My mom was a teacher. My daddy was a janitor. And so there wasn't a whole lot of money being thrown around in our household. And so anytime you said, Dad, can I have? He said, well, son, let me introduce you to somebody. You see that shovel over there? You see that rake? You see those yards out there? Have at it. Mm. And so I became an entrepreneur because I didn't want to have to always ask. And I started that as a young age. But as I became an adult, I was speaking with a young man a few minutes ago, I didn't want to have a boss. I didn't want to have somebody always telling me what to do. And so I sought out opportunities that I could explore entrepreneurship. And I learned that entrepreneurship is actually a skill that can be learned, right? It's not something that you're born with or necessarily that, you've got the gift, but you can learn the craft of entrepreneurship. And so when I saw an opportunity in the financial services industry and I saw how underserved our community was, I said, well, here's a place where I think I can really sink my teeth in and do good and do well at the same time. Yeah. So that was my journey. Yeah.
I would say I got passionate about entrepreneurship really at an early age, because when I was in college and going into the NFL, I had a conversation with Ronnie Lott. I went to USC, Southern Cal, and I remember he made a comment and he was like, begin with the end in mind. And I have the foresight of entering into a career that I know is going to end one day. NFL, I played 9 years. This is my first year retired, but I knew it was going to end. I was blessed enough to play as long as I did and all of those things. But when you're going into a career that you know is going to end, it made me ask myself, well, what's next? Yeah. And what is my life going to look like, once I retire, and I identified that there's opportunities and things that I can do to take advantage of to put myself in a good position for that. And that was kind of the mindset I had, is like, man, let me not retire and then have to start from ground zero. Let me build something up while I have this opportunity. And obviously that's me as a professional athlete, but I challenge everyone in this room that you could do your own version of that within, whatever your career is, whatever your path is. Generating income outside of your 9-to-5 is something you should be considering doing, because it might not be as pressed as it was for me in the NFL. For me, every year I'm watching the draft and I'm seeing them trying to draft somebody to replace me. It's not as obvious in whatever you guys do for a living, but the same thing is happening.
Absolutely.
So when you have that, when you understand that, saving your money, knowing what your TMI is. I talk a lot about the spread between how much you make and how much you save, and that gap in between. That's what you really want to be concentrating on. How do you increase your earning potential? For me, it's like, all right, how can I get as good as I can at football so I can make as much money as I can? Let me keep my expenses down. But what's your version of that? And, having that mindset, and all right, how can I generate income outside of the game of football? How can you generate income and, start to build wealth outside of what you do? And the easy answer is to say I can't, but we all can.
Yeah. And so how did you find real estate?
Real estate came to me, honestly. I was in college, my last year at USC, and it didn't look like I was going to make it to the NFL. It was before my last season in college, and I dealt with injuries, position changes. My chances of making it to the league did not look good at the time. So I met with this gentleman, and he started out as a police officer and owned thousands of units in Los Angeles. And I remember leaving that meeting, and I'm like, if he was able to build what he built off of a police officer's salary, then I know I could do the same thing with or without football. So I kind of had my mindset of like, that's the route I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And, hindsight now, I've been blessed to be able to play as long as I did and have the career I had. So, it allowed me to take off in that. But I think I made that decision then.
Wow.
That's deep. That's deep. Yeah, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's interesting you mentioned the police officer that you ran into, because in my former life, I worked as a correctional officer for the Cook County Sheriff's Department. Wow. And that kind of sparked my second wave into entrepreneurship, because I recognized that I didn't want to be in law enforcement long term. And I knew that I could leverage what I was doing in law enforcement to build a second career. And so I would encourage, piggybacking on what you said, every one of us is in the exact same situation or scenario. We just don't realize it. And it's not as in your face as when you're playing in the NFL. NFL stands for not for long. And so it applies to all of us. Whatever position you're in presently, think of it as NFL. It's not for long. And you have to plan and strategize so that you can position yourself so that when or if it does end, and hopefully it ends on your terms, but whenever it ends, you're ready to pivot to whatever's next for you, and always be thinking what's next. Even in business, you got to be thinking what's next.
Absolutely. So quick poll. Raise your hand if you are an employee. We're not shaming anybody. Just raise your hand if you're an employee. Okay, hands down. Raise your hand if you are an entrepreneur. Okay, hands down. Raise your hand if you're both. I love it.
Absolutely.
I love it.
That's
right? So you got a 9-to-5 and a 5-to-9. Right? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? And the goal, hopefully, is that the 5-to-9 money gets up to where the 9-to-5 money is, so that now you have options. Right? You can fire your boss. Right?
Absolutely.
Cool. And so in both of the work that you do you see more black men investing in real estate, becoming homeowners? Then do you see more black men wanting to learn more about, investing, insurance, and those things, or is it stagnant, or is it declining? What have you seen over the last couple years?
I would say for me, I think you guys probably seeing it with podcasts like Earn Your Leisure and things like that. I feel like it's we're headed in the right direction of wanting, to be financially literate and to learn how to invest and figure it out. I think we need to continue to increase that pace, because I don't think it's optional anymore. Whether you realize it or not, you need to be saving money and investing and figuring out, how you're going to generate income and generate wealth for yourself long term. And if you're not, you're really behind the 8 ball, whether it looks like it right now or not. So having that mindset of it's not optional, let me be intentional about this and figuring out what I can and should be doing. I think that's kind of the next phase to where more African American men can start heading in that direction. And I feel like that is the next kind of step for sure.
Okay.
So it's interesting, a large percentage of my clientele are female. And it seems that the numbers are down as it relates to black men leading the way with investing. And I think there are a number of reasons, contributing factors to that. Obviously, student debt is impacting that, incomes are impacting that, but I think the number one factor is that culturally, I don't know, I grew up on the south side of Chicago. We talked about saving after you got through spending everything. And that's a backwards mentality as it relates to creating wealth. And so that's a different mindset that we've got to help shift and educate our community on. You've got to think, invest first, and then you spend what's left. And then while at the same time managing expenses and managing our expenditures so that we can keep that at a certain level and stop trying to compete with everybody who can get the biggest Rams or whatever. But really think about long term, where am I going? What's the end in mind? And what vehicles and how am I going to get there? And so I am passionate about financial literacy, so much so that I was teaching it at high school for a couple of years, because I think part of the problem is that where do you go to learn this stuff?
Right.
You learn it from the guy in the cubicle next to you who may or may not be doing the right thing. And so I'm really adamant about helping people to become financially literate by actually engaging in different thoughts and ideas than what they grew up learning or understanding. And so that trend hopefully can and will turn around, because inevitably, if we don't, the alternative is that we're going to literally be dependent upon the government or somebody else for all of what we need. And someone said, if the government gives you everything you need, then they can take everything you have.
Yeah, that's deep. That's deep.
I think to speak to that, it made me think about a concept I really believe in, and it's delayed gratification. And with talking to black men, especially my age, I'm in my 30s. It's hard to tell them, you can't go get that Charger that you like, or the nice house or the nice watch. But the delayed gratification of, for me, the easy thing for me to do is make NFL money and go blow it on the material things that I want. But I challenge myself to believe in delayed gratification. It's like, let me invest in something that can then buy me those things. So you don't have to say no, but not right now. And there's ways that you can buy even some of the material things that you want while still putting yourself in a great trajectory. But you have to be willing to embody delayed gratification. But you can have it, and you can have it in abundance that way. And instead of having it one time, being able to have it for a lifetime. And I think changing that perspective and adding that step into, all right, I make this money, there's these things that I want, no, let me invest it and then use that money and what I'm earning from that to then buy those things. That changes the game.
I think another thing is that we don't really understand where we are from the perspective of, we think that we're further along in the race than we actually are. And we don't realize how far behind we are either. I'm of the mindset that I believe we actually become financially behind at about age 12. Because when you think about the time value of money and the just limited amount of time we have to work and earn it, we really ought to start saving way before we become adults to start that habit. So one of the things that I talk to young people about is first of all, I had the McDonald's job when I was 16, right? And I said, listen, you don't have to pay any bills with that money. So adopt the mindset that says, I'm gonna save half just starting out the gate because I don't need the money. Mom and dad is paying the bills. Yep. I'm eating, I have the clothes, I have what I need. So let's start with that mindset. And then you can carry that on because it's easier to start there than to have to try to back in that way later on in life. Yeah. And so I think for many of us, when we graduate college with student debt and we get these jobs that don't pay, commiserate with where the economy is, we're behind. Yeah. And then we think we have all this time, and then when we get the first raise, where we think we can go get the charger, and we go do that, now we're maxed out, and we're stressed out because we're waiting on the paycheck to make sure we pay all these bills. Yeah. And we're just basically in this never-ending cycle that's what leads us to an early grave.
Yeah, I think about the game Cash Flow. Anybody ever play that game Cash Flow?
Yeah.
Right, where everyone starts out with a job and an income and bills, and then everyone starts out in the rat race.
Yeah.
Right, and the goal is to get to the fast track. Right, and that's like what you're saying is like most of us start out in that rat race where we get paid every 2 weeks, so we know it's coming in, right? And the best way to utilize that money is to put it into things that will IPAs, income producing assets, that can then pay our bills and pay our liabilities for us. And that's the goal of that game Cash Flow. So if you haven't played that game with your teens or your kids, I suggest you do that.
Absolutely.
Because it's better than Monopoly. Monopoly is like surface level. Cash Flow takes it to the next level, right? And to both of your points, I've never heard the phrase, keeping up with the Goldbergers, right? I've heard keeping up with the Joneses. Yeah. Right? Where we feel like, oh, my neighbor just got a new Tesla. I'm in Atlanta, and I've never seen so many Chargers, Challengers, and Teslas in my life. I'm like, are they on sale in Atlanta or something? Like, I swear, I'm like, this is just Teslaville, right? And so we have that need to go buy the newest. A brother in the last session said he gets a new Range Rover every year. I'm like, do they even make a new one every year? Don't they just change the headlights? Right? And so, I know me, I had my first job at 13 pushing carts at a ShopRite, which is like Publix, right, in Jersey. And by the time I got to college in Jersey, it was move-in day, and they had these, tables, and I wanted a Frisbee and a water bottle. And the guy said, fill this out. I said, okay, no problem, cool. Give me the Frisbee and water bottle, I'll go on and live my life. 2 weeks later, I get this shiny silver card in the mail, and it was a credit card.
Yep.
Ooh. So I peel it off, and it says $1,000. I'm like, ooh. And I don't know if y'all know, this is 2001, circa 2001, in Newark, New Jersey, and these things called throwback jerseys by Mitchell and Ness were really popular, right? Jay-Z was wearing them, everybody was wearing them. And so my first thought as a 17-year-old with a brand new credit card was, I can go and buy 3 throwback jerseys. You know what I did? We took the train from Newark to Philly, and I went and swiped a credit card for 3 throwback jerseys. And I maxed out my credit card. And this is from a person who had 2 parents in the house, 2-parent income. My dad owned real estate in Jersey City, New Jersey, and I remember being in the car when he was going to pick up rent. And not once did he ever explain to me, this is our bodega, these are the apartments, this is how much it brings in, never that. And so I learned by the hard way how to mess up your credit and mess up your money. Yeah. Right? And so I'm very, very passionate, adamant about making sure our young people know what money is, where it comes from, how to make it, how to preserve it, how to save it, how to budget. And so speaking to the work, you said you do work with high school students and all that. And Devon, if you could speak to the work that you're doing with you, because I know it's very important to you as well.
Yeah, I think it kind of starts there because we get behind the 8 ball as kids. So if I can kind of reach the younger generation, and I've taken it seriously because I feel like being an athlete I can connect with the younger generation better than a lot of people, just because, you know, they look up to me when they can see me on Sunday, and then now I'm, you know, in their classroom telling them about, you know, saving and investing. So I kind of taken that platform seriously and really kind of wanted to pour into minority kids throughout the country, talking about financial literacy, because they don't know anything, and before you know it, they're in a situation like you were, and they're going to college and they're getting into all this student loan debt, and, you know, they're starting behind the 8 ball, you know, as you were saying. So, you know, if I can reach them at an earlier age so they can understand some of those concepts and really kind of change their trajectory and make better decisions earlier, then, you know, that's kind of my passion point in you know, really impacting that age group.
Yeah, that's key. And so we're gonna do Q&A in a few minutes, so think about your questions. And you already know, y'all heard it enough times already, right? When you're asking questions, what to do, what not to do. Do I need to remind? Okay, we're good. Cool, and so the importance of real estate and home ownership, the importance of financial education, you guys, were you raised with that, or you developed that, and why do you think that's so important in moving forward, especially for our black men?
Yeah. So I grew up the same place you did, School of Hard Knocks. My parents were very conservative and frugal, and they said, save your money, but they didn't give me any context as to how and why. Because I felt like, okay, I got paid this week, I'm gonna get paid again next week. It's all good. So the School of Hard Knocks, we got the same bio, man. Except at my school, they were giving out this little application to get a free lunch at McDonald's. So you can take a look at me and see what I did. I signed a few of those.
Oh, man.
And so, same story, ran the credit cards up and got into trouble. And so I started working in the mortgage business, actually. And from there, I met a gentleman that basically mentored me and recruited me into the financial services industry. And that's where my education began. Just understanding how money works. In fact, if you want to follow me on Instagram, my name is Jeffery, How Money Works Ferrell. And there's a website also that we offer you a free book called How Money Works, Stop Being a Sucker. Now, I'll give you some context. When you go to the bank, typically the teller has a big jar of lollipops right next to them, right? Anybody ever notice that? Have you ever noticed what brand of lollipop? Dum Dums. And I don't think that's by accident. Wow. I think they're trying to send a subtle message to you to say, hey, dum-dum, you don't know what to do with your money. Give it to me. And so in that book, it just talks about basic introductory principles and concepts that people need to understand about how money works and stop being a sucker. Because here's the thing. If you don't understand how money works, and I do, guess what's going to happen? I'm going to win, and you're probably going to lose. Yeah. And so for a long time, the financial services industry has benefited from our ignorance and our not knowing how money works, how interest on a credit card impacts you and works against you versus how interest can really help you in an investment.
The rule of 72?
Exactly. And so for that reason, I just started digging deep into financial books like Cash Flow Quadrant, like Think and Grow Rich, also tax-free retirement, things of that nature that just started to spark my mind. And then I started to talk to people so that I could understand what I didn't know already. Yeah. Part of the problem is we tend to get in silos and circles of people that only agree with us and only know what we know. We got to find the people that know what we don't know and don't agree with us so that we can learn more and be forced to grow and expand our horizons. And that's where the education begins. So I would challenge you to find experts and find professionals that can help you expand your knowledge and expand what you don't already know or don't understand, or even give you some perspective that you didn't agree with before, because there are a lot of philosophies out there about how to deal with money.
Yeah.
There's certain people that say, make sure you get out of debt, buy term, don't buy anything else. And there are people that say other things. And so how do you know who to listen to?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, speaking to that last point, I think people make investing and finance more complicated than it has to be. It's almost like going on a diet. Like, at the end of the day, we all know what we need to do if we want to lose weight.
Right.
Like, you've researching all these different diet types
Don't go to
and
McDonald's.
doing all this stuff. But at our core, you know where you need to start if you want to lose weight. Yeah. And I think you need to look in the mirror and take the same financially. Like, at least the next step you need to make if you want to be financially better. Yeah. It's right in front of you. Yeah. And then once you take that step, you can start to learn, and there's so much content out there free now on YouTube, books you can buy. Yeah. So, don't make the excuse of I don't know, or it's too hard, or it's too complicated. It's not that hard, it's not that complicated, and they're not that much smarter than you. And, I've gotten that a lot as an athlete, like, the dumb jock thing, like, no, you got me twisted. Yeah. Like, if you could learn it, I can learn it. Yeah. If I can learn a football playbook and all the X's and O's and all of that, then I could learn about how to buy a property and, about interest rates and all of these things. So, I challenge you. You don't got to do it, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You ain't got to know everything right away. Right. Learn enough to take the next step. Yep. Yeah. And then the next step. Yeah. And you'll be surprised at where you'll be a year from now by just having that mindset. But so many people look at it and it's like, there's too much. It's too complicated. I don't understand. Yeah. So they just stay where they're at. When if you just start walking, you'll where you can end up is amazing.
That's amazing.
That's really good.
So we're gonna do the Q&A right now. So if you have a question, there's 2 mics right here. And so if you could please give these amazing people 2 things. If there's 3, it's cool. But 2 things that actionable strategies, resources, or tips that will help them acquire, accumulate, protect, or pass on wealth.
I'll start. 2 things. I talked about it early, but go home and figure out what your TMI is. What's your target monthly income? How much are you spending a month? Know that number. And number 2, I would say, really hone in on what your fixed expenses are, because when the start of getting your financial life in order, it's like, all right, saving money and stuff. But so many people focus on cutting back on Netflix and not shopping here, not doing that. Yeah. And I found it is the fixed expenses, which is where you live, the car you drive, the student loan and education debt you're in, and the bad debt, credit card debt, and things like that, that is really dragging most Americans, and especially people of color. Get those expenses in order before you start worrying about cutting out your Netflix or, things like that. Because if you're paying $2,800 in rent and you could find an apartment that's $2,200 in rent, that's $7,000 a year in your pocket that you can start investing. That's good. So what's more important, moving to that $2,200 or cutting Netflix or Starbucks? So
no, ain't trying
you know what I mean. So
I think they Netflix.
I think changing and focusing on fixed expenses and figuring out your target monthly income, I think are 2 things that everybody can do right away, and it can impact your life.
Nice.
I like that. Netflix, you can share those passwords too, right?
Nah, they ain't playing Netflix. No, Netflix.
Not no more. They tighten it up.
They clamp down on it. Okay.
They know what Wi-Fi you signed on with.
They're not playing no more.
So I want to piggyback on what Devon said. You need to know your TMI. You need to know what that number is. But here's the challenge I think that every one of us can take on. It may be difficult to necessarily cut down expenses. Some of fixed expenses, they just are what they are. I know in Chicago, a decent apartment is about $2,000. And it's hard to go anywhere for less than that you would want to live. And so sometimes it just is what it is. But here's what I do know. There's not many financial challenges that you have that making a whole lot more money won't change. But if you keep your expenses the same, but increase your income, you can begin to build some traction there. So I would say focus on, I believe God has placed in each one of us some creativity that comes from him that you are especially good at, that if you focus on cultivating and developing, you can take that into the marketplace and start to develop some additional income for yourself. So leverage that because God gave it to you, and that's part of the purpose and why you're here, right? And so that's the first thing. The second thing is don't be afraid to ask questions. Find a professional, find someone that is either where you want to be or beyond where you want to be, and become a mentee of theirs. It starts with just being willing to accept instruction. And then that can develop into a relationship where someone will coach you and help you to get where you're trying to go. But don't go at it alone. Too many times, we as black men are solopreneurs. We fight by ourselves. We only look out for ourselves. You got to partner up. You know, we've got to figure out how we can come together for our own survival, but then also for us to thrive. In order for us to survive, we got to come together. In order for us to thrive, we got to help each other. And so not be afraid to ask for help and reach out to someone that you know is doing something or in a space that you can develop and grow in.
That's funny. So you said take instruction from the guy that said, I don't like nobody telling me what to do. I like that. I caught that. Okay.
Well, I package it in such a way that you don't feel like I'm telling you what to do.
Right. I said that 18 minutes ago. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Right? All the greatest proverbs are from Africa, just so y'all know. I'm not being biased, but I'm Nigerian, so it is what it is. So we are going to take some questions. So your name and what your question is. Go ahead.
My name is Anthony Jenkins, and you kind of addressed what my question is about, because basically when we have the money, whether it's a little bit or whether it's a lot, what we tend to do is that we make other cultures wealthy. What can we do right now collectively so that we can begin to keep the money within our village and start building businesses like the Waltons did with Walmart?
So I'll start. So shameless plug, the Teen's Guide to Wealth, which is the #1 resource for teaching teenagers everything they need to know about money from a biblical perspective. Instead of publishing this on Amazon and giving Jeff Bezos more than he already has, I decided to work with a black-owned printer in Atlanta, in Buckhead, right? So if I'm going to pay somebody $3, $4, $5 to print this, why not go to somebody who looks like me, right? And so that's one of the ways that I do that.
Yeah, I would say I think I've mentioned this, the most important part of a building is the foundation. And so the first part of that foundation is making sure you protect against loss. Protect yourself against what could go wrong if you have what we call this disease. I don't know if anybody ever heard of it. It's called job interruptus. Has anybody had that, job interruptus? And so what is that? That's an emergency fund. That's a fund of money that if something hits the fan and you got to continue to live because your bills won't stop, you have some funds to rely on. I think too many times we chase after the sexiness before we build the foundation. The next thing is what can ruin every financial plan? Dying or almost dying. And almost dying is worse because you're still here. And so there are insurances that you can make a part of your portfolio that will protect you against those things, while at the same time building you some cash reserve that you can leverage later on down the road. Can't be in too big of a hurry though. So secure the foundation, protect, then you can build upon what you've protected.
And there's black people that do all that.
Facts. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that as far as, putting yourself in position to help, people within your community while still being able to profit. And the way I think I try to do that is quality work, quality work and opportunity. I want to, if I'm hiring someone or I'm looking for contractors in real estate, like I want to find quality African Americans who could get the job done, and I could partner with, hey, you do a good job by me, I'm gonna pay you fairly, and we're gonna have repeat business and opportunities. So I think, putting people in position to be successful while also it's advantageous for me as well, I think that's the way that I do it, and it's a good approach to have in business in general, I'd say.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Martin Booker with AARP. I teach financial education for AARP. How do you bridge the gap between knowing and doing? Because a lot of us know how to read and haven't picked up a book in 10 years. Mm-hmm. So, literacy isn't always enough. So how do you manage that? And then how do you add in the mental and emotional aspect when it comes to managing money? Because there's a lot there as well.
I'd say between knowing and doing, it got to be important enough to you. Mm-hmm. Like at some point, it's like, does it matter or does it not? Because if it's important enough, you're going to end up you're going to actually do it. And then, with me with real estate, one thing I found with a lot of people is they start to learn. They're listening to different podcasts, they're doing different things, but they never go out and actually buy the first property and all that. And I say at some point, you got to shoot your shot. Yeah. And within that, I'm conservative by nature. I've made what I've made playing in the NFL. I don't want to lose it. I'm risk averse. So shooting my first shot, I bought an $87,000 property in Beech Grove, Indiana. It was the first investment property I ever had. And I believe in crawl, walk, run. So if you're like me and you're risk averse and you going and buying some $500,000 property or starting some mega business, it sounds too risky. You're not willing to do it. Man, start smaller. And there's nothing wrong with that. And the money that I made from that first property, no, it didn't change my life financially, but it changed my life because the things that I learned up to that point, there was stuff that I was never going to learn until I got in the game. Yeah. And I bought that property and I'm like, that wasn't that hard, or getting the loan this way. And then I'm able to build upon it, and it's led to the portfolio I have today. And it was started with one property for $87,000. So I think that would be my answer to that.
Very nice.
Good afternoon. My name is Stanley Rayner, and the question I had for you guys is, as I've started to make more money, one of the things that I thought I had never really had control over is how much I had to pay in taxes. And I guess overhearing a conversation one day about how some people are using real estate and small businesses as a tax planning strategy, something I had never even heard about, despite being in circles with people who made a lot of money. So I guess my question to you is, how important is tax strategy to your overall investment strategy, and what things can we do to kind of manage that tax bill?
Okay. So I'll say this: you need to have at least two professionals in your life, a CPA and an attorney. And your CPA needs to be someone that can help you with tax strategy, tax planning. Right. Okay? I'm not a CPA, so I'm not giving you tax advice, but you need to strategize with a professional based on where you are and what your situation is on how you can minimize your tax exposure. There are a lot of tools out there. Yeah. But if you don't know what you're doing, you can hurt yourself. Yeah. And that's what tends to happen. As I've said to my 15-year-old, you know enough to be dangerous. And so it's very important that be willing to write that check and pay the person for their expertise so they can really help you, and not just go at it because you saw a YouTube video or somebody's Instagram post that said, do this play and you'll be good. Because that may wind you in front of somebody explaining, saying, well, Your Honor, I meant to. And so,
And if you're not in the NFL, anybody says anything about running a play, don't listen. That's bad news, right? The third person I'll add to that is your financial advisor. And when we talk about that Rockefeller mindset, he had a tax planner, he had an estate attorney, and he had a financial advisor. And he had all his family in the same room while they were talking, right, on one accord. And the last piece I'll say is I'm not a CPA either. However, the tax code in this country was written for and by two people: business owners and investors. And if you understand that, you'll understand why his income and my income is taxed at 10 to 15%. And employee income is taxed at 30, 40, 50, 60%. You know what I mean? So that knowledge, now that you know that, figure out what business you could start or buy, and figure out what investments you can invest in that will help you with that question. Right?
Thank you, gentlemen, for your time today. My name is Nadeem Samore. I work at Invesco as a technology associate. And my question for you guys is, when it comes to being fiscally responsible, is there a certain point where you're operating in scarcity versus abundance? And kind of what was that line like for you guys overcoming, like, I got to hoard everything that I'm getting versus living my life as well?
Ooh. I'll speak to that in the sense of, like, I think it's more, and he kind of said it earlier, but I think it's more important to focus on increasing your earning potential than anything else. Like, because can you cut spending down? You can only cut it down so much. If you're in Chicago, there's only so much you can cut it down, but like how much you can potentially earn is far more important, and that's how you can increase that spread. Exactly. And if you keep that spending down, but keep finding ways to earn more. So I think, really focusing on that component instead of just always only decreasing spending, I think is really important. And it's because decreasing spending could be challenging sometimes. That energy is better off on, all right, what's my innate skill? What thing can I be developing that can help me generate another $10,000 a year, $20,000, whatever? That's going to be more impactful than, saving a couple bucks here. So I would say that's my take.
If I could add on that, I think also it's important to, at a point, cap your lifestyle, right? More money doesn't necessarily mean you need to increase your lifestyle. I think at a point you decide, okay, I'm going to live on 30 or 40% of what I make, or whatever that number is for you. But I think you should decide that up front, right? Before the money starts rolling in. And then decide what you're going to do with the rest. Because it's not just about hoarding. I don't want to promote hoarding, because I think what's really important in real wealth is being in a position to do the most good for the most people. And so in order to be in that position, you've got to decide preemptively that my lifestyle will be this. And as long as my income is here, my lifestyle will remain here. And then you can really, I think, really see the world with different glasses on. Because now it's not about just trying to survive or hustle or make the next dollar, but really, how do I really bring value to the world and what I'm doing?
And the mindset should always be that there is abundance, right? Abundance is our birthright.
Absolutely.
And money is supposed to circulate, not sit under the bed in the shoebox. So think about that.
Thank you.
Eugene Evans, data scientist for Travelers. My question is, I saw multiple people raise their hands, 9 to 5 or 5 to 9ers, wearing 2 hats. What, from a financial standpoint, how do you make the decision when to put down that 9 to 5 hat?
Money. No, I mean, if you're making $5,000 a month at your job before tax, and your side hustle is making you $5,000 1099, and you know that if you took those 8 hours from the 9 to 5 and you put it to that 5 to 9, you could probably turn that 5 into 10 or 15. At some point, you got to jump off the cliff. Just know that there's going to be a net somewhere, but you might bruise your elbow, and you might, you know what I mean? You might knock off the side, but if you're already making a certain amount of money from your side hustle, and you're only doing it for 5 hours a day, 4 hours a day, have that faith that if you took that time, you could build it up even further. That's mine.
Yeah, to add to that, I feel like the reason why I announced a couple of days ago that I was retiring, this is my first year, and the reason why I did is because I put myself in a position to where I can play the game of football because I want to and not because I have to. And I think that's the most powerful thing we as people could do in whatever we're doing for a living, is like, get to the point one day where you get to choose if you're gonna do that job, because you've established yourself enough outside of it to where even if you want to keep doing it for the next 20 years, it's because you want to. You really like the impact you're able to make and things like that. So getting yourself financially in the position where it's like, okay, I'm making enough without my day job to where I can make that decision either way, and that might free you from the job or be like, I really am passionate about this, I want to continue. But the power of choice is something that's special that I think is something we should all kind of, reach for. And I can say finally getting to that point in my football career, as stressful as it could be, it's like I had opportunities to continue to play, but the opportunities weren't good enough, essentially. And there's sometimes players who feel like they spend all their money and they have to take whatever they can get.
Yeah.
I felt one of the most things I was most proud of is being able to be in a position where it's like, that's not a good enough opportunity for this point in my life. I got young kids at home. It's not worth it. I don't have to do that.
Yeah.
And, I think it's powerful to try to put yourself in that position.
That's wonderful. I wanted to add, because I'm actually in that position now, where I have a business, but I'm also an employee.
Yeah.
But I'm an employee because of a purpose. I happen to be working for the first black-owned stock exchange in the history of the United States. We're getting ready to launch. And so I'm there to help black people, and I'm there for a purpose and intention. And because of what we're doing and the historic, momentous power behind that, that's why I'm doing that.
Yeah.
And so if it aligns with your convictions and your values and what you're doing, you believe in it, then fine. But if it's to a point where now you have to go to work and you don't want to, I tell anybody that might be time to exit whether you're ready to or not. Because I just don't believe in doing things just for money. At a point, if that's what you're doing, then it comes across in how you do what you do, and you don't do it to the best level of your ability. So if it's at a place where it still aligns with your convictions and what you believe in and your principles, then fine. But if there's ever a point where now it's like drudgery, that might be your indication. Time to go.
Yeah. Follow your gut, but bring your brain with you.
Good morning. Welcome to Miami. My name is Kevin Samuel. I'm from Overtown, Liberty City. When I look this is my first summit. When I look in the room the BET has offered us, I see a lot of successes, and I'm appreciative of it. It makes me feel good, comfortable. However, there are a number of things that we're doing right in our communities and a number of things that we're doing wrong. When you look at Miami, Miami has grown leaps and bounds. But when you go to Overtown, Liberty City, look at some of these regions, you see some of these warehouses, some of these storefronts, and after COVID, a number of things have gone down. And I'm looking at what is it that you can tell us to provide us inspiration to go back into our communities, to deal with some of the mindsets that we deal with in Miami, Detroit, Chicago, where oftentimes you want to say, you know what? I want to back off from that. I want to invest my money in Fidelity, in JP Morgan. I want to invest my money in this and not invest it in the community. Look at some of the buildings, some of the facade of our communities and say, you know what, I'm going to put my money in that. Because oftentimes we deal with mental illness, mental issues, and we say, you know what, I just don't want to deal with my community at that level. I'd rather put my money here. I'd rather look at money in the suburb. I'd rather look at investing here as opposed to placing money in the communities where it's needed. So my question to you is, what inspiration can you provide to us to allow us to walk away and say, you know what, this is something that I'm going to do. I'm going to move forward on this and not look at it and say, you know what, I'm going to kick this to the curb.
I'd say if you have a distinct advantage to help like that situation or that community, then take advantage of that. But the math don't lie. Like I consider myself a numbers guy as I'm crunching numbers and looking at investment opportunities. What's my potential return? What's my risk? And if you can invest in your community and improve your community and make money, then take advantage of that opportunity. So I would say dive into the opportunities that are there. Is there opportunity to improve your community as well as make money? And if you have an innate passion for that already, then that's a great synergy and a reason for you to move forward. Yeah. And so I would say, consider that. But if you're just looking at a building, like I don't. If you're trying to make more money and invest, I don't believe in doing that for charity. So you got to look at the numbers and saying, okay, does it make sense for me? Right. Is this a good investment? Can I make this a good investment with my skill set? And if you can, you have the passion for it, and you're able to do it. That's a distinct advantage that other people. That's an opportunity because other people outside of your community are missing it because they don't have your skill set, your ability to execute on that. So I think it's a kind of a shift in perspective on that, and like, man, this is an opportunity that people are missing, and now I've done the numbers, I see what I could potentially make here, let me take advantage.
Yeah, thank you. So we're gonna do the last 2 questions because I've been told to one question.
Tony Santos.